Okay, so what we need to do now is we need to make the score. We've already made the score save into the button, so the score is in the button. Now we've got at the end of the round of 10, we need to make sure that when we click the next term, and it says, right, we finished our round of 10 attempts or 10 terms, then we need to make it save the score to the local storage. Okay, so we need, first of all, the key here is when you start the flashcards for the very first time, the local storage item won't exist. Second, third, fourth, fifth time, we should be keep adding to the local storage. Okay, so remember the difference between session storage, local storage. Session storage, when we close the tab down, is gone. Local storage, it's still there, so we can pick it up again, but the very first time we have to make it. Okay, so we need some code in our JavaScript to make sure that that happens. So that when we load the flashcards page, it loads up the flashcards JS. Okay, and that runs on the document ready function, which is what prepares the page. And the only thing we've got to prepare the page is add in the buttons, and we've got a start routine which runs up, and that sets the session storages, and it also then adds the buttons, and it sets the score in the button to 0. Okay, so we want those things to happen, so we'll need to reset it and so on. So let's just think about our pseudocode and what's got to go on here. Basically, we want to say we want to check if the local storage for the score exists. Okay, and if it does exist, then we want to check if the local storage, if that exists, then we don't need to do anything to the score. Okay, but if we if it does exist, we want to show the scores on the page. Okay, maybe the last 10 scores, because we don't like hundreds of scores. That will be useful. And if it doesn't exist, we need to make it. Okay, so let's do that check. So we want to do if. Okay, so if we're doing the check there, but else, when we do the else, we want to update the page. Let's put the last 10 scores. That would be sensible, wouldn't it? The last 10 scores, maybe that's a good idea. Okay, now I'm going to leave you to do this bit. Okay, that bit, updating the page. Now we've done lots of updating of the page, so you need to think about what's going to go into that section about updating the page. Right, now if we're going to check if a local storage item exists, basically what we do is we try and get it. Okay, so with local storage and session storage, we can use get item, and that will get the item for us, right? But if it doesn't exist, it will return a null value. Okay, it will say, well, it doesn't exist, there's nothing there. So if I say local storage dot get item scores, and there's nothing there, it'll come back as null. So if it's not null, then that means we can update the page with the last 10 scores, or however many there are. Okay, so here, if it doesn't exist, I need to make it. Now I'm just going to make it like I made used. Okay, so we made used to be an empty list. So it's going to contain a list of scores. Okay, so used is an empty list, but I don't want it to be session storage. It's going to be local storage, and it's going to be called scores. Okay, and that's going to stringify. It's going to make it into string, put it into local storage. It has to be a string. Okay, and it's going to be an empty list. So that will set it. So that's all fine. Okay, so that will set it. I'm going to leave you to do this bit here. Okay, but we can, before we update it, we can load the local storage. Storage for scores. Okay, so if it already exists, let's get it. Okay, so we're going to say const scores equals, and we'll just get it from local storage, but we need to pass it. Okay, so it's because it comes in as a string, and then we can say local storage dot get item and then scores. Okay, so that will get for us, that will get the local storage. So if it doesn't exist, we're going to make it. Okay, so it'll be an empty list. If it does exist, we want to bring it to our page, and then we're going to then update the page, go through that list and update the page with, let's say, the last 10 scores. The last 10 scores is too many, we can say the last 5 scores maybe. Okay, that'd be a good idea. And then you can do that. I'm going to leave that for you to do. So, but you don't need to do it now. So let's think about when we've got to update that list of scores. So we've already got in the page, or when we click on the next term, we've got it here. When we click on next term, that it tracks our score. So we've got a score. Where is it added to the score? So we got up here. So on click of BTN check. Okay. So when we've checked, we've got an on click, and we're getting the user input. We're grabbing the score from the button. Okay, and then if it matches, then we're going to update the score. So the score's in the button. Okay, and it's in with the key value. It's in BTN check, and the score is the score. Okay, so we've got the score for the particular term, and the score is being updated as we're going through this round of 10. Okay, so let's think about what we need to do when we end that round of 10. So when we end that round of 10, we should be in BTN next. Okay, and it's where we've got 10 terms have been used. So it's where all terms are completed. Okay, so let's just think about what we've got to do in terms of pseudocode. What's got to go here? So we want to grab the list of scores from the local storage. Okay, so we're going to get all of them. We want to make a new object for the score. Okay, from this round of 10. Round of 10. Okay, that's what we want to do. And then what do we need to do with that? So then we need to update the list. So should we give this list a name? So grab the list. Let's call it scores. Okay, scores is that. Let's make a new object called score, which has got the date and the time and the score. And we want to then append score to scores. Okay, and then we need to save scores back to local storage. Okay, that's what we've got to do. So we're going to grab the list of scores from local storage. Local storage. That's called scores. Okay, and then we want to make a new object. Okay, which has got, and that new object has got to have, what's it got to have in it? So it's got to have the score from BTN check. Okay, because remember, we're adding to that score and we're going to have the date and the time. Okay. Current date and times. Okay, so it's got to be when we're doing this. Okay, so this is what we've got to do. Now I'm just going to make this a bit wider so it doesn't keep going out the way. Right, so this is our pseudocode. So we've got to grab the list of scores from local storage, and that should be in the local storage element called scores. We've got to make a new object with the score from BTN check. We've got to append that score to the list, and then we've got to save the scores back to local storage. Okay, so here, so let's say constant scores equals, so we're going to say local storage dot get item. Okay, and that's scores, so that'll be our list. We need to make sure that we unstringify it, so JSON parse, so we get it, so it's a JSON object, so that will get it as a JSON object. So that's that. So let's build the score. Okay, so I'm going to say score, and that's going to be a JSON object, and that's going to be made up. It says the score's got to be made up of score, colon, that's the key, and date, colon. So the score will be made up of the data off the button. So BTN check, and it's the data called score. Okay, so that was being updated. Okay, so remember here in this one, BTN check, we're adding the score to the score variable, and then we're putting that score variable into the data for score. So that's what we're grabbing back. Okay, to get the score, it's in the button. So where are we here? So that gets that, and it shouldn't be a semicolon, it should be a comma. And then we need the date. Now in JavaScript, to get the date, we say date, and that gives us a date and time. So if we look on JavaScript on W3 Schools, on the dates, this is how we make a new date. So if I just do that try, and you'll see eventually when it loads up, you will see that that is my date there, and you should put it into a HTML element, and it comes out like this. Okay, but it gives us the date and the time, and it gives us that timestamp, and that's, we don't need a separate one for time, it's all in there. So that makes my object, and it's got the current date and time, so we should make that. Okay, and then we need to append score to scores. So we say scores dot, we're going to push it, okay, because it's a list, and we're going to push score. Okay, so that will take this score here, that one there, and push it into this list that we've got. Now we need to put the list back into local storage. So this is set item this time. Storage.set item. So we're going to replace what we had before with what we've just updated and added. Okay, so we'll need to say JSON.stringify, and we'll need to say scores. Okay, so what that's done, we've grabbed the list of scores, okay, from local storage. We've done get item and got scores, and then we made a new object that we're going to put into the list. We've got the data, the score from the button. Okay, it's been updated into there. Every time we click check, we've been updating it. So that's the score, and this is the date. Okay, we've added the date, and then we push that into the list, and then we set the session storage